Okay, so it's automatically recording. So now it's
Okay.
recording. So
A nonprofit organization, ICare4Autism.
Okay.
That's an organization that's dedicated to improving the lives of children and adults who are living with autism. So Dr. Grandin, it's such an honor and pleasure to have you here with us today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's good to be here.
Great. You've done so many amazing things with your life. You're a noted animal expert and the author of over 60 scientific papers on animal behavior. You're also a big advocate for autism rights and neurodiversity, and you've been featured numerous times in major agencies like TimeMagazine, People Magazine, Discover, Forbes, the list goes on. And in 2017, you were even named to the Women's Hall of Fame. So you recently co-authored and published a book along with other world-renowned leading experts on the subject, and that book is called Autism in Lockdown, regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as we all know, is still an ongoing and very hot-button topic these days. So I want to discuss the lockdown a bit and how that has really impacted neurodiverse individuals. So can you tell me a little bit more about the book?
Well, it affects different people differently. I mean, what I've been talking to is some people on the spectrum have adapted really well to a new schedule and others have not. I was just got off the phone with a mom where a 7-year-old was having trouble with workbooks, but I think the problem was not understanding the work. They're expecting kindergarten kids today to understand much more abstract stuff. And I suggested, okay, the kid couldn't tell the difference between, okay, there were 3 birds' nests, or there's 3 eggs in a nest. And you're talking about the number of eggs or the number of nests. And he's having trouble with that. And I suggested just get some jars and some marbles and do it with real things.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes that's the best. Just concrete.
Yeah, and then in teaching nouns, they start right off with a person being a noun. I would start off with things like food items, dog, plate, shirt, things that are, that was, rather than having a person as a noun.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
I think that was some of the problem. This stuff is getting too abstract.
That's very true.
And then call the verbs action words. And then you got position words like up, down, in, on.
Yeah,
and
not to mention all the articles.
Demonstrate those with objects.
I understand, yeah. So what do you think is the most important thing that our audience needs to know about neurodiversity? And can you tell me any insights that you have?
Neurodiversity just as far as autism goes, or neurodiversity in a broader context?
Well, you could talk about both. One
of the problems is we tend to talk about things way too abstract. I hear people talking about disabilities and they're lumping a person in a wheelchair with a blind person and autism all together. And the kind of accommodations and things that are totally different. You see, I'm a visual thinker, so I don't think abstractly. I'm going, okay, jobs for a person using a wheelchair. If it's in an office and they have computers, the wheelchair should have no effect on that job.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking, waist down, paralyzed. They should be able to do any job that they're capable of doing with a computer. You see, I see that. But there's a tendency to lump all this stuff together in a very abstract way. How do we get employers to do this? Well, I think a better way to look at it is telling stories about specific examples of things that worked.
Specific individuals who were successful.
Specific individuals where something was very successful. And when I started my business with livestock handling equipment design, I started one satisfied customer at a time. That's how I started.
Yeah, and I think those are always the best business models anyway, that really tailor to the needs of each individual customer.
Yeah.
So do you think that the general public today is still, on a regular basis, generalizing people who maybe have special needs or specifically autism? Do you think?
Well, the other problem we got with autism is, since 2013, when they changed the guidelines, you got this huge spectrum going from Silicon Valley programmer to somebody who can't dress themselves. They are totally, totally different things. Absolutely, totally.
Yeah. Do you find that there's still a lot of, you know, stereotypes that exist for, I guess, how people view higher functioning autism versus lower functioning autism?
Well, you see, the thing is, you're talking about people that need totally different, you know, accommodations. You know, a lot of my background is neuroscience. So one of the big things, the problem even for someone like me, is processor speed. If I was a computer, I'd be an Intel 286. So I've got very, very small working memory, but I have a huge long-term memory. So I'm an Intel 286 with a cloud memory, you know, that with lots and lots of memory. Now, when I talk about that, I'm seeing a great big huge warehouse full of servers there where all the movies and things like that live.
Right.
See, it's not abstract, but it's what some of the accommodations you need for bad working memory. Any task that involves sequence, I've got to write down the steps. I can't remember the sequence. I'm terrible at multitasking. I've got problems with interrupting because I don't do the timing. I don't get the timing. That all goes back to a really bad working memory, small processor speed.
Okay.
You're working with little kids, you got to give the kid time to respond. They're like a web page downloading really, really slowly. That's what they're like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we have to kind of really look at each person as an individual because, like you said, everyone's so different, but they're all lumped into the same diagnosis, yet it's a spectrum. So everyone's completely different from one another. What kind of jobs do you think will kind of emerge from the post-COVID world? I mean, there's been a lot of effects of COVID for, you know, for anyone.
Well, I think what's going to end up happening, what's happening now, just in all the business stuff I'm reading, is at first people were really productive working at home, a lot of them. Now people are just missing all their friends back at the office and just kind of going stir crazy. There's a you know, seeing your friends at the office, also collaboration that we're not getting it. We're not getting that here at the university. They're trying to do some meet and greets online, but it's just not the same thing. Now, what I could see happening in the future is, let's say for business stuff, is, yeah, there'll be a lot of work done at home, but then maybe you got one day a week where you get most of the people into the office. So then you would get the collaboration. And then there's some jobs that lend themselves where you don't need collaboration. Like for years, I mean, well, I've called up, you know, United Airlines 1K desk, and I heard a dog barking. So I know that the lady was working from home.
Sure.
That's been going on. That's been going on for years.
Yeah.
Now that kind of a job, in other words, helping people with their reservations, that doesn't require the kind of creative collaboration that other types of jobs were. Okay, like college professors, you know, kind of talk to other professors and you get ideas for research. Now, if you don't kind of, you know, bump shoulders in the hall with those other professors and other students, then you may miss out on ideas for research. See, that some jobs really need that collaboration.
What do you think
if you're
about
just doing airline reservation things, that doesn't.
Right. So it kind of depends on the nature of the job.
Well, the nature of the job. And then you've got a person that's doing that job. They can set their hours that they do it. And it's very specific and it doesn't require much collaboration.
Right. What do you think of the whole movement for a lot of the collaboration taking place online versus in person?
You can replace a lot of in-person stuff, but you can't replace all of it.
Yeah, and especially that social component that I feel like is essential to a workplace.
Well, and you can't work with little kids, real little kids online. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you're teaching hands-on skills, you know, a skilled trade like welding or something. I just talked to a lady at the mailbox yesterday. She's taking a ceramics class. And they gave her a great big huge thing of clay to work on at home, but you can't do you can't fire the clay, and there's no potter's wheel, so she can't learn how to do the potter's wheel. You know, there's certain things that you know you just isn't going to work at home. Right. You're not going to have a welder in your living room and use it.
And especially all the healthcare professions where, you know, you really need that hands-on practice, like in nursing or.
Well, that's right. That's a problem. Labs are a problem. I just talked to a girl who's a freshman. She's taking my livestock handling class. and they have an in-person biology class, and you're trying to teach them how to use microscopes. Well, the way you normally teach you how to use microscopes is you lean over them and you adjust the microscope.
Sure.
And then you both look through it.
Right.
And that involves being right on next to each other, so you're not social distancing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how you begin to run a lab where there's microscopes and things like that involved when you're not actually physically seeing a microscope in front of you.
Well, they've got the microscopes in front of them.
Oh, they do. Okay.
But part of the problem is that the TA can't come over and lean over that student and kind of show you how to twist the knobs on the microscope.
Yeah, or even make sure you have the correct slides in front of you or anything like that.
Well, yeah, it's not been easy.
Do you think there are any positives of kind of the COVID pandemic as far as, maybe some people really excel virtual surface versus?
Well, I think let's talk about the positives of virtual. There's nothing positive about COVID, but let's talk about
the positives of
in scientific
virtually.
meetings, papers are getting wider distribution.
Mm-hmm.
See, if a student gives a 15-minute paper or they present their poster, more people are seeing that poster. That's
Absolutely.
positive. I've done a lot of international stuff where I've talked to a lot of people. That's a positive. The negative is not getting the informal collaboration. And now that COVID's gone on now, since March, I think people are getting more and more wanting that real collaboration.
Absolutely.
And what I think is going to happen is sort of a hybrid model where there'll be less people coming into the office, but they still are going to need to have times where people get together in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I work on auditing animal welfare, and that's used to be all done in person, but now they're trying to keep all the visitors out of the plants because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So now you get a video camera in the hands of one of the employees, and let's say I was doing the audit, then I'm telling them where to walk around. I almost use them like a robot to walk around.
Okay.
And stuff. Now I could see that replacing some of the in-person audits, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I would never do that with a place I'd never been to, because they could be hiding some stuff from me.
That's very true.
Says, oh, well, they can send you a floor plan. Well, I'm sorry, they might send me a fake floor plan.
That's very true. Yeah.
But what I think it could do is reduce the travel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's going to happen with big conventions? Maybe there'll be some of these sales calls. I think some of them will get replaced virtually, but then when you do your first initial contacts with a client, you may want to do it in person. I don't think everybody's just going to instantly give up all the online stuff.
Right.
But
do you think that there's a way to kind of minimize some of the impact that the COVID-19 disruptions have had on?
First of all, you're talking so abstract, I can't even answer the question.
Oh, I understand.
It's way too abstract.
Sure.
See, I'm a visual thinker, so nothing's abstract.
I got you. Yeah, let me make it more concrete.
In a wheelchair, I'm going, okay.
No, let
they
me
can
make
do
it more
any
concrete.
job in an office.
So like the impacts of, let's say, telehealth, right? So, providing services to individuals with autism over a screen. What type
Depends
of...
what's wrong with them. I mean, I had to have wax taken out of my ears, so I'm not doing that over a computer. I had to go to the doctor's office. I'll tell you what our doctor's office has done, and
Yeah.
I think it's pretty smart. If you're sick, it's telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something where we really need to do something, like they had to take a hard wax in my ears had to be taken out, that you come in for. And we were social distancing. We were waiting outside. They only allowed 2 people in the waiting room. All the patients walked out the back door. And if you were sick, they don't want you in there if you've got something that's contagious.
Understandable.
And that makes sense, because there's a lot of stuff you can't do telehealth. And there's other stuff you can. Look at
What about in terms
actually
of
could do that
therapy?
telehealth. And there's other things you can't do.
What do you think about in terms of therapies? Because we've had a lot of...
Well, little kids, I don't think little kids, speech therapy is going to work real well online.
Right. Unless you have
the only thing I've talked to a bunch of people about it, and about all they can do is coach somebody else how to do it. Watch how the mom does it, somebody else does it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've suggested to some of the moms to get get some grandmothers and volunteer, maybe a couple of volunteers to come in and work with this kid. So mom's
That's
not so
definitely helpful.
frazzled.
Yeah, as an occupational therapist myself, I found that the best sessions were ones where someone is physically sitting with a child and is able to kind of assist in whatever information I'm providing over the screen.
Well, that's right.
But yeah, nothing replaces having that in-person interactions to really show
You know, and then there's other things where, you know, counseling,
Right.
you know, follow-ups online. I think that we're not going to just instantly just give up all the online. What I think is going to happen, some of the online will stay and reduce some of the in-person stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what even tech companies are realizing that there's a certain in-person stuff that they need to have in order to just get, you know, like creativity in the company.
Yeah, I think you're able to.
Companies need that a whole lot more than other companies.
Yeah, and the brainstorming, like when you're physically together in person and you have the whiteboard in front of you and everything like that.
But then you just have the chance meetings in the hall and
yeah,
think up a new idea for a research project.
Absolutely. And kind of being in that environment already, as opposed to just
right.
on your couch and trying to develop something. So ICare4Autism, our organization, is working on an app where we are aiming to connect and build a more personalized toolkit for neurodiverse young adults. Yep. So it's essentially a transition plan and a profile to increase opportunities for employment at different local, federal, and smaller agencies. So the app itself, ICare4Work's ultimate goal is to be able to provide the technology for helping these individuals get apprenticeship opportunities to teach them readiness skills to be able to pursue higher education or go straight into a well-paying job that will enable them to help best live their life and, you know, be as independent as possible. What do you think is like the most essential or crucial feature for a program like this?
For working with young kids?
More so for working with adults who are looking, or almost adults looking to transition from the school to
one thing is I want them to get jobs before they graduate from high school. All right, little kids now, let's do chores. Let's start doing something in the neighborhood. I know all the churches are shut down now, but those were perfect places to do volunteer jobs. 10 and 11-year-olds start learning some job skills, like maybe serving food or whatever, where they have a task on a schedule outside the home and it's not mom and dad.
So getting
really pushing church volunteer jobs when you can't do those now. Maybe dog walking. Of course, people now are bored and they want to walk their own dogs now. But those are the sort of things when COVID finally gets over with, that we could push things like dog walking, church volunteer jobs. These are what I call paper route substitutes. Because what I'm seeing is granddads coming up to me, and these granddads had a paper route when they were 11, and they're finding out they're autistic when the grandkids get diagnosed.
So what types of changes do you think companies need to be making in order to best suit the needs of these people going for the apprenticeships? Or
well, first of all, I got to look at what kind of job, different people, different skills, what's an appropriate job. You know, we can't just lump all the employers together. You know, half of Silicon Valley probably is on the autism spectrum. Who do you think makes the technology we're on? It's the autistic brain. That's who makes it.
So what types of things do you think the technology companies, like you were saying in Silicon Valley, what is something that they can do?
Some of them like SAP and there's some Microsoft have been, you know, doing some programming stuff, but that's going to be for the math kid, the real smart math kid. That's not going to be for a kid that's partially verbal.
Right.
See, this is the problem we got with autism, is you got such a range, and somebody who's partially verbal isn't going to be working at Microsoft.
Right.
But somebody's just, you go to Silicon Valley, half the programs probably have autism, and they avoid the labels, and they make $100,000 a year. But where the autism could help them would be on their relationships, understanding their relationships. That's where the diagnosis could be helpful. And then another issue that came up recently is autism an excuse for doing something like financial fraud? And I'm going, no. No.
I haven't even heard of that.
I was brought up that you don't do those things.
No, absolutely.
You just don't.
And what's sad to me too is that, you know, a lot of these big tech companies, like you were saying, that could really employ a variety of people with autism, especially those who would really excel in that setting. The rate of people with high functioning autism who are employed is so low. So what do you think we could do to kind of...
Well, the thing that's crazy is you got a whole bunch of undiagnosed autistic people that are running Silicon Valley.
That's true.
See, this is the problem. I have been there. I've been to the companies. I've sat in their cafeteria and watched them come in for lunch, and there's no question they're on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's anything we could do to kind of ensure more people on the spectrum are more present in the workforce?
Well, you're going to do it one person at a time. I see too many parents that are too overprotective. Their kid isn't learning shopping. He's not learning bank account. He's not learning any basic skills. Not learning stuff that I learned when I was 7 and 8 years old, like saving money. I got 50 cents a week for allowance in the 50s. I could buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably pretty good.
It bought what $5 would buy today.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
And I could get 5 comics with that 50 cents.
Okay.
But if I wanted that 69-cent airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. I was learning that at 7 and 8 years old.
Yeah, so kind of
learning. That's how you teach the concept of saving money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like enough of those like readiness skills are not really being prioritized in
they need to
in the
be.
home.
And the thing is, one of the reasons why Granddaddy had a job is they were brought up learning that stuff. They were also brought up with very clear right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And the kind of shows I watched, the child like Lassie and Superman, Lone Ranger stuff. I mean, they had clear values about good and bad.
Yeah, that's definitely missing, unfortunately, in a lot of the children growing up today.
Oh no, grown-ups behaving bad on the national news, that I was never exposed to.
Okay.
You see, because the thing is, I learn how to behave by what I'm taught. Mm-hmm. And I was taught really, golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, one specific example at a time.
That's the best way to do it. And the golden rule is still very much applies today, but it's not as talked about, unfortunately.
But let's just say it in regular language. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And think about, it can range from something like, I remember 2 wallets I returned at the airport.
Oh, that's awesome.
You see, that's something specific. And the one of them I had to go take it to the information desk. It actually took a little bit of time. I found it in the ladies' bathroom. And
oh, that's nice. I mean, especially in our society today, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily even do that. So
no, I just took it right to the information desk. And
oh, that's amazing. Were they able to link the person?
Well, I heard them announce and then the lady's name.
Oh, great.
Because her license and her ID was in it.
Oh, okay. Even better then. What would you say if you were to encounter somebody with an early diagnosis of autism and the parents are a little bit overwhelmed?
All right, wait a minute. Give me more specifics. Little kid, what?
Let's say, within the first 2 years of life, the parents receive...
Little kid, very young. Little kid.
Very young,
I got to know because it's going to affect what I'm going to tell them. Little kid not talking. 2.5 years old, that's me. Not talking. That would be me.
So what kind of advice would you give to a parent who is...
You got to do something about speech therapy and teaching them to talk and working with them now.
Yeah.
And don't wait 2 years for services. You got to start working with this kid now. Here's some books you can get. And of course, I'm going to recommend my own book, The Way I See It, my most basic book on autism, The Way I See It. I'm going to recommend that. And you got to start working with this kid now. Teaching them how to take turns. How to wait and take turns. It's some simple little game. You got to start teaching them.
Yeah, getting in early. Absolutely. I feel like those, at least from an occupational therapy perspective too, those are the individuals who really make the most progress is when they start.
Well, you got to start. And I'm going to just tell them. The worst thing you can do is nothing.
Absolutely.
And get some grandmothers in your community to work with these kids. Because what I've found is some teachers have the knack and others don't.
That's true. Yeah.
But you've got to start working with them and working now. Don't wait 2 years for services.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I could get services within a month, I'm definitely going to do that. But there's some places where you can't get services, or you got to wait 2 years or a year for a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do is to do nothing.
I absolutely
The other
agree with
thing I'm
that.
going to tell them is that when kids are 2.5, they can look really terrible. I looked really terrible when I was 2.5. So you work on them, get them talking, get them to take turns, teach them skills like dressing, showering, using the bathroom, stuff like that. Get them to use those skills. And then some kids can be like me, and there's others maybe that remain nonverbal. They need to be taught to type independently.
Absolutely. There's so many different paths someone can take, especially if you start young.
The problem is you can't tell just by looking at little kids.
No.
I'm talking 2 and 3-year-olds, whether or not they're going to become fully verbal or not. You don't know.
Right.
That's why you got to start working with them really, really super early.
What would you say the ideal future from here looks like? I know that's a very abstract question.
You ask very abstract questions. And the other thing that's unfortunate is there's some discrimination going on. I talked to a guy, an adult, had a good job, kind of an outdoor, semi-technical type of job. 5 years he had it. He disclosed and they ended up leaving.
Oh, wow.
That just happened.
Wow.
I can't go into the details of the job because I can't identify them. But, yeah, a little bit geeky, would have been real mild, very good at his job. It involved mechanical things. And he'd had it for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Same boss. I asked if the boss had changed. It hadn't.
Wow, that sounds like
That's
a loss.
now. That's during COVID is when I got.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
This is right now. This is not something 10 years ago. All I can say is I talked to him, and COVID started in March. It was during COVID. So This is real recent.
So there's still a lot of, I guess, negative thinking surrounding what's.
Well, yeah, and he's the kind of person that probably didn't need to disclose.
Uh-huh.
You know, there's certain specific things like I'm terrible at multitasking. I would disclose that.
Sure.
You have individuals more involved. Yeah, you have to disclose.
Right. But even so,
this guy was more like a Silicon Valley type, except he worked in more an outdoor mechanical stuff job.
So what do you think we could kind of do to change the negative thinking surrounding situations like that?
Well, one thing I've tried to do is to show what you can do.
Yeah.
Show what you can do. When I was in my 20s, there's a scene in the HBO movie where I was building those projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. That was a very, very big thing. I wanted to prove to the world that I was not stupid.
So really
show what you can do.
Highlights of what you're.
The other thing is, I think it's very important. There's some people that get in a lot of negative garbage online. I think we need to bash that golden rule in. Live by the golden rule.
I think so too.
Every religion has the golden rule. It's universal. I've looked it up.
And that's true for
treat others the way you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
There's a lot of hateful stuff online. Let's bring them up. That's garbage, and they need to stay out of it.
Yeah, and really not to feed into anything negative that you might see online.
Well, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's one of the negatives of technology these days too, with all.
I'm just so glad that when I was a young person, I was not exposed to this rubbish.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to give over a main message to educators or advocates for this.
One of the things I would do, people have asked me, what would I do to fix up the schools?
Sure.
I put all the hands-on things back in the schools.
Okay.
Theater, cooking, sewing, woodworking, auto shop, metal shop, doing plays, because these are all things that expose kids to careers.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that stuff out's the worst things the schools have done. I just got off the phone with a mom before here. They're trying to teach her kid algebra concepts in kindergarten. I think that's pretty crazy. Okay, you just upgraded it so that we're not gonna get kicked off in 40 minutes.
Oh, no, I think we're good, but we're wrapping up. I know you have a lot to do.
But it's, they were teaching them stuff that's too abstract.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to teach nouns. Well, don't include people as nouns. Let's start with dog, cat, chair, potatoes,
Mm-hmm.
milk, food stuff. And then verbs or action words.
Yes.
And then you have what I call the position words, up, down, in, on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would demonstrate it with real objects. This stapler is now above the table. I put this stapler under the table.
So making it
I
as
put
concrete
the
as
stapler
possible.
on the table.
Yes.
So with a single stapler, I could demonstrate position words. I think toy airplane is a really good way to demonstrate position words. And that makes it concrete. And this stuff in this workbook, and I just got off the phone with this lady, was really, really abstract.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think, this is a 5-year-old kid, and I don't think they understood it.
Yeah, I mean, that's complicated in general. So it's nice.
Well, I wouldn't start off with a little girl being a noun.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little girl running, a little workbook.
Okay.
And let's start with a cat or a dog running. See, now I've got to teach the running concept. Okay, running concept. People do it. Cats do it. Dogs do it. All the 4-legged animals can run. So I'm teaching that running doesn't apply just to people. It can apply to cats and dogs too, and horses. And then I suggested that she do some things with actual real objects to teach some concepts. This is not complicated stuff. This doesn't cost anything to do this.
Yeah, and it's surprising to me that everything is becoming so abstract. When
what I think is happening,
concrete
I think is happening is the verbal people have totally taken over.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, I'm a visual thinker.
So they need more visual thinkers that are actually designing these curriculums.
I think one thing I want to talk about really quick before we have to go is that there's different kinds of thinking. I am an object visualizer. Everything I think about is a picture. Mm-hmm. And the HBO movie showed it perfectly.
Yes, I remember that. The scenes.
But I can't do algebra. Well, don't keep me out of doing a skilled trade because I can't do algebra. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
I need arithmetic taught up through 6th grade the way it used to be taught. That I need. Mm-hmm. And then you've got your math kids. They're going to be your computer programmers and engineers. And then you've got your word people. What I think is happening in education right now is the verbal thinkers have totally taken over. And I thought it was a little girl running. Okay, we're using a little girl for a noun. And we're first going to teach 5-year-old nouns. I mean, I would start with cat, dog, chair.
Right.
House is too big. Some food items, shirt, pants, socks.
Something they can easily recall to mind.
Things like that. A house is such a big thing. I don't think I'd start off with a house being a noun.
Right. So something more directly in front of a person.
Well, there's so many nouns in the house.
Right.
You've got furniture with names of furniture. Mm-hmm. But I'd keep it simple. Sofa, chair. Now, couch and a sofa, that's the same thing.
Oh, I like it. I think that would make things so much easier too for any
really. I want to learn that, okay, nouns are names of things, verbs are action, and then the other thing, you have position words, and then you have what I call filler words.
Yes.
And they can just learn those like a parrot learns them.
Okay, great.
You just learn them.
Well, Dr. Grandin, thank you so much for your time today, and it was a pleasure.
We didn't talk much about lockdown. One little thing about lockdown.
Yes, please.
Get up, get dressed, showered, ready for work by 8 o'clock. Dressed for work, not lounging around in jammies. You've got to make a new schedule for yourself. You've got to get yourself onto a schedule. Just have got to.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you being here with us today, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
All right. Well, it's been great to talk to you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Well,
thank you.
Sign off right now. Okay, great. Yep. Bye.